Al Jazeera did a really, really great documentary on some of the findings from 2003 that indicated some of the torture techniques that they used at Gitmo. And one of them is known as music torture. So Al Jazeera talks about what music torture is and how it affects the detainees. Let's watch.
In 2003, it transpired that U.S. intelligence services tortured detainees with Sesame Street music for days.
Now, my first reaction was, this can't possibly be true. This is just too crazy. And it was absurd. But of course, I didn't really like the idea that I was helping break down prisoners. But it was much worse when I heard later that they were actually using the music in Guantanamo to actually do deep, long-term interrogations, and obviously to inflict enough pain on prisoners so they would talk.
Now, the man in that interview is Christopher Cerf, and he is the composer for the Sesame Street music, right? And they use Sesame Street music to drive these detainees crazy during interrogations.
Now, in the beginning, it sounds like a crazy idea to begin with. Like, why would you use Sesame Street music? But I could hardly stand it for 5 seconds, let alone, and I'm not disrespecting the guy. It's for kids, when they started stuttering it, you know, I don't know if that was part of the point or not. I don't know if that's what they do, but I know they did distort the music a lot of times. Now, imagine listening that at deafening volume for hours on end.
In fact, the next video talks about how many hours the prisoners would have to listen to the music, and it was based on the level of sound. Let's watch.
The medical specialists carefully describe the torture procedures CIA agents are allowed to use during interrogations. They focus on methods that leave no visible traces on the prisoners, such as noise and loud music. Permitted noise levels are as follows: music as loud as the noise of a highway for 18 hours a day, at the volume of a cranked-up motorbike for 8 hours, as loud as a truck engine at full throttle for 4 hours,
Ugh.
and as loud as a jackhammer for 2 hours.
Imagine listening to a jackhammer for 2 hours. I could barely handle it when I'm walking by.
Yeah, and imagine, I think that it's in some ways worse with music because it's so repetitive and it's, you know, and it bores down into your head. And then the motorcycles can be incredibly loud, and you're for hours on end. I think they said 8 hours they have people listen at that decibel level. And look, in some ways they can turn around and go, oh, come on, you're gonna call listening to music torture? Oh, you libs, right? Come on, you're getting carried away. But in reality, it could easily drive you out of your mind.
Yeah, in fact, they give a perfect example of how they would use that music, distort it, and basically use different music at the same time. Let's watch.
And sometimes it was like 2 songs playing against each other, completely off tempo, just like blaring, you know, say this rock music with like a Johnny Cash song against each other.
And they play them both to in the same room, to the same guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get
that actually made the case less compelling.
Really?
You know, because as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, cool, Johnny Cash.
Yeah, but then you hear the metal music, and you know, as he mentions, it's off tempo, and it just completely, it drives me crazy. Like I'm
already off tempo.
I could not. You are. That's right.
Okay, no, I know. That's just, you have to understand. It's part of the point I'm making. That this is a little misleading when you listen to it for 5 seconds. It's a different thing when you listen to it for 5 hours straight, and they mix Johnny Cash's Sesame Street and the rock music, and it's one big jumble in your head, and you can't get it out of your head.
By the way,
do it day after day after day.
So I did research into music torture because I was fascinated by it. Because we often talk about physical torture, but we never talk about, or very rarely talk about, psychological torture. And music torture is actually something that's been implemented for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, during the Korean War, the Chinese and the Koreans would use music torture against Americans and South Koreans, right?
Well, actually, That's exactly where we got it from. If you remember, all the torture that we're doing now is, and this is, the Bush administration admitted this, they got it from the old manuals of the Chinese during that time period. The Chinese used to do this to torture, including our guys. And we went back and were like, oh, communist China and their torture methods. We jump in it. That's what Dick Cheney thought. That's great. Oh, thank God we found these old Chinese torture manuals. Do you understand how sick that is? I mean, the whole point of in the past, the Republican Party was like, goddamn communists, we're better than them. We're the shining city on a hill, as Reagan said, because we don't do the kind of things that the Chinese do, like torture people. Oh, we got their manual? Great, let's use that to torture people. I mean, that's how much the Republican Party has lost its mind.